What's up, everybody? It's your boy Israel, and thanks for joining me on this live session. I've got a special guest with me, the Independent Report, Charles from the Independent Report. Definitely go check out his YouTube channel. What's up, Charles? How you doing today, man?
Doing pretty good. Haven't been home from work very long. Trying to maneuver my way home around all the people in a rush. South Carolina gets a little bit of snow and everybody goes crazy. So, what can I say?
Yeah, we got a little snowfall down here in Colorado. So, yes, there's been a lot of crazy stuff happening in the news lately. I know me and you haven't chatted in a little bit. Um, but why don't you tell people like
Yeah.
what your channel is about? Kind of, give them the breakdown.
So yeah, I'm pretty much a lot like Israel over on this channel. Um, just kind of keep up with what's going on in politics today. Obviously, I've been very vocal. I'm a Tulsi Gabbard supporter. Behind that, I'm probably going to have to rank Bernie as my number two at this point. Andrew Yang would be a good third. But I'm going to cover everybody fairly.
Yeah.
I've voiced where I have disagreements, with Bernie, Yang, even Tulsi on certain areas. Very, much in line with Tulsi on the anti-war message. That's something that really hits home. Something that I've been, looking at for a long time. All the endless war we get into as a country,
Right.
and just how bad things like that are. Something else I pay a lot of attention to, things like trade, jobs. Coming from South Carolina, old South state, uh, big part of culture down here in the South for a long time was textile, mills, gold cotton mills, as we call them
Yeah.
down here in the South. Things like that started getting outsourced, costing a lot of middle class down here their jobs. People in my family directly impacted by things like that.
So would you say that's what
And
got you
with
interested
the
in
way things
politics?
changed, it made it harder and harder to find. Yeah, that's a large part of it. A big part of my family. Uh, I had multiple aunts who worked in cotton mills. My grandpa worked at a lumber mill,
Okay.
and just gradually over time, you start seeing more and more of it just start to close up, and they had a hard time finding work after that.
Yeah.
And eventually, I stumbled upon Jesse Ventura during high school. I hadn't really
Right.
gotten too much into politics, but I
Yeah.
started off listening to some Jesse Ventura clips. And when he started calling out things on the Democrats and the Republicans, eventually I started watching more and more things and, started to study it and realize just how corrupt both parties were. And so ever since I've, been 18 and really before then, that's why I've considered myself an independent. Uh, the arguably the Democrat Party was much more, from what I've studied, the working class party for many years. But right around 70s to 80s, they clearly took a turn to the right, and then right around Bill Clinton, they took a hard turn toward the
Yeah,
right.
they called that the third way or something, right?
And then they're not that party they used to be anymore.
Yeah, exactly. All right, man. Well, yeah, everybody definitely go check out the Independent Report on YouTube. I've got the link down in the description. So I'll keep reminding everybody throughout the stream to go check out Charles on his YouTube channel. Definitely doing some great work. But today we're going to get into a couple of topics. So, obviously the Iowa caucus is coming up, so we should definitely chat about that. And give a little bit of analysis there. I know Bernie Sanders is surging. Everybody's kind of holding their breath, because we'll see what
Yeah,
happens. But there's been a lot of like courting of the different candidates. Like you got the centrist candidates trying to work together, and there's people on the progressive side trying to kind of give some voice to the Tulsi Bernie Yang alliance. So we'll talk about that. But the first topic I wanted to talk about was you had brought up Joe Rogan's response that he just
yeah,
finished, doing something on that. So obviously, if people don't know, Bernie Sanders came out and kind of tepidly endorsed Bernie Sanders. I would say it was more of a shout out to Bernie Sanders, saying, "Hey, look, I'm thinking of voting for Bernie Sanders in the primary here in California because he's from California." Before that, he had talked about Tulsi Gabbard being his girl because he liked the anti-war stuff that she was kind of pushing. And even in that same clip where he endorsed Bernie, he brought up Tulsi as a vice president. He said that would be an amazing ticket. But so yeah, what happened with this recent follow up then?
So I didn't catch the guy's name, but I was just listening to the clip on the way home this evening, and his guest basically kind of made a joke his way, and they said, "So hey, Joe, who you gonna vote for?" Obviously, because that's what I think the guest asked him at the time, where he said he would probably vote for Bernie. So being as how all this backlash and fallout came from his response to that lady's question, when he asked, you just see Joe laugh, and he kind of touched on all the controversy that's come up from it. And he explained, he said, it's very clear that they're trying to tear Bernie down by having an association to me. But his response was basically, hey, look, I run a podcast, Joe. I used to host Fear Factor. I train in mixed martial arts, and I commentate for the UFC. But what I'm not is a politician. I'm not a policy hawk. And to use his exact words, he said, I'm not balls deep into this. He said, if you're going to try and vote, or decide who you're going to vote for based off who I may or may not like, that is not a good, decision for you to make, because and he may have used a different word to describe himself, but he basically said that, and when it comes to politics, he's an idiot. He doesn't follow it close enough. He said he knows who he likes. He knows who he's, more preferable towards. And he said straight up, he said, I like Tulsi, I like Bernie, and I like Andrew Yang.
Yeah.
And he's been pretty vocal on Tulsi now for a while. As a matter of fact, she's the only one he's actually said he did endorse. He said he would probably vote for Bernie, but earlier last year, he actually came out on his show and said he was endorsing Tulsi Gabbard. So that's the only one he's clearly used that language for. And even when he said he would probably vote for Bernie, he was vocal there. He wanted to see a Bernie Tulsi ticket.
Do you think?
But basically, his whole point was, don't base who you're going to vote for off me. And this is nothing but, political theater to try and tear down Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. Do you think that he's probably shifted on the Tulsi Bernie situation because, he kind of sees that, Bernie, it's coming down to Bernie and Biden. So he endorses Tulsi as, a candidate who best represents his policies, perhaps, but sees the pragmatism of, hey, voting for Bernie might just be, the way to go in California. By the time they get to California, even though Tulsi has stated that she's going to stick around to the convention, and we'll get to a story about our favorite fella, Habibi, over at the Progressive Voice. But, despite what some of those kind of folks think, I think that her remaining in the campaign for obvious reasons. One, it's a democracy, right? Go figure. Right. We're arguing for, the allowance of people to state their voice and their opinions through the ballot box. What a radical idea for us to pitch that. But that could be a factor, right? You think that could be a factor for Joe, that he's just kind of being more pragmatic at this point?
I obviously don't know Joe, and but logically speaking, that's what I think that it more than likely is. Realistically, Joe knew who Bernie was when he said those things at the time. He brought Bernie on his program, and then after he had Bernie on his program, he had Tulsi back on his program, and he hadn't switched from just having Bernie on his program. He's doing it now. And when you look at recent events, Tulsi was not part of the last two debates. And so I think he's looking at it more or less, okay, the DNC is probably going to try and do something along the lines of what they did last time around. He's certainly not one of the people who has tried to defend that the DNC is this, honorable group of folks. He's obviously had plenty of people on his program talking about how corrupt the Clintons are, how corrupt the DNC is. So he probably knows. So there's going to be some trickery afoot again before the end of this thing. So, it would probably be the best idea to get as many votes behind the candidate who it looks like has the best chance of winning. Because if he can get a clear majority and just put everyone else to bed, then they can't screw him with super delegates. I think something like that is probably what he's looking at. And that's why he said, I think you got to look at his language. If it was just he really liked Bernie, why not say, yeah, I'm voting Bernie Sanders? Why say, I'm probably going to vote Bernie Sanders? That means that there's something in the back of his head telling him, well, I kind of want to do this, but at the same time, because of this reason, I'm probably going to do this. So obviously there's something that makes him think that it is the wiser choice to end up voting Bernie. But he didn't definitively say, yeah, when it comes time for California, I'm voting Bernie Sanders. It was just a probably. So I'm with you. I think that's probably exactly what's going on there.
Yeah, no, I agree, and we'll have to see what happens, but I think it's interesting that everybody freaked out. That was like, to me, that was the craziest thing. Like seeing the reaction of just the toxic, um, whatever you want to call it, woke SJW people, people who care about surface level issues because,
Yeah,
they're not struggling economically. So why should they care about, Flint, Michigan, those kind of people,
exactly.
so it was funny to see that reaction. And, it almost surprises me that Joe just didn't just say, you know what, whatever. Like, if it's this crazy, maybe I shouldn't even bother voting or whatever on the Democratic side. So, I was surprised that he didn't just kind of throw his hands up, because I would have already, I have a short fuse, so I would have already been on Twitter, like, responding back and just saying, like, geez, like, why are people so, that sensitive over things that somebody, like he said, he's just a podcaster. He just, does the UFC stuff and he gives his opinion. And yeah, some people might say he's got millions of viewers, but that's another reason to actually back this type of thing. It's like, it's not like Bernie Sanders moved at all. It's not like Bernie Sanders said, well, on this issue or that issue, maybe Joe has a point. Let me start scooting over to his position and maybe court his support. No, it was Bernie's positions and his, relentless record of consistency that got Joe Rogan to come on board and say that. So
Exactly.
I don't know. People miss that. Maybe it's just, it's the kind of a civil war conflict that's happening in the Democratic Party, where you're seeing that ripping apart, like you saw with the GOP. But yeah, I mean, I didn't want to harp on this issue too much.
Yeah, well,
yeah, go ahead.
just to touch real quick on Joe there. You said like the whole short fuse thing and why he didn't respond. I don't know just what kind of how long Joe's fuse is, where how quick tempered he may be, but judging from watching his podcast pretty regular, if he read anything that probably pissed him off, he probably just went and smoked a lot of pot and calmed down afterwards. So.
Right? Yeah, you'd have to.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, the other thing I kind of wanted to bring up was Andrew Yang. Apparently, there was this Bloomberg article. It kind of caught some attention in the sense that, like, I don't know. I've been talking to some Yang people, and they were like, "Oh, he didn't say that," and people are misconstruing what he said. What the article basically said is that Andrew Yang was simply stating the fact that, hey, I get a lot of Bernie overlap, and some of the Bernie supporters, I can see them voting for Bernie in the second round of Iowa voting if I don't get the first round 15%. If people don't know how the voting in Iowa works, it's basically like a two-tiered style voting where the first round everybody gets together, they all kind of caucus for their candidate, and at the end of the day, if there's only two people who pass the 15% threshold, then everybody else who didn't, those people have to, well, not those people, but the people who did get 15% have to basically court the rest of the people to go on one or the other side, It could also be the fact that, a lot of Andrew Yang supporters just don't like Bernie supporters. That could be another thing too. But I saw a lot of backlash on Twitter. Other people were saying that, they were being very receptive. I don't know. What's your take on that whole situation? Just to kind of start off with Andrew Yang, because there has to be an alliance built, as we move along this primary.
Honestly, I would see if Yang and Tulsi, for that matter, if they don't cross the 15% threshold mark, I would suspect that probably the majority of the people who end up voting for them are more than likely going to end up casting their votes behind Bernie Sanders. Now, this wouldn't speak for anybody or everybody, rather, who may not cast their vote behind Bernie Sanders. Uh, um, but I would hope that if it came down to, oh, you got a choice between Bernie and Biden, they would throw their support behind Bernie, no doubt. Or, Bernie, Warren, Buttigieg, whomever. Please go with Bernie. But that being said, unfortunately, there are just some people who look down their nose and think that, okay, I have the right candidate, and in the fact that you're supporting someone else who's polling lower, even though their stances are kind of sort of in some areas, Tulsi more than Yang and Bernie, for example. Tulsi and Bernie are very identical in a lot of ways. Yang differs from them in some areas. But the main thing
Yeah, he's
is there's
more
so many
libertarian.
people who have flocked behind Bernie who just take this very egotistical tone when they address a Tulsi supporter, Yang Gang, whomever. They've got this really, okay, we're better than you. You're the fools of the crowd. Your candidate's going nowhere, and you're just wasting your time. Your candidates are wasting our time, and all they're doing is hurting the guy who, should be getting your vote in the first place if you really care about these issues. And even though it's not coming from Bernie himself, and Bernie's probably not going to speak up on the matter, unfortunately, that puts a really sour taste in people's mouths. Now, some are going to argue that and say, okay, well, are you really going to let what someone else says judge who you vote for? Because, you're not voting for them, you're voting for the candidate. But at the same time, some people on the opposite side are going to look at that and say, you know what, if that's what your base is, I don't want to be associated with it, because those are people with big attitude problems. And when they get on Twitter and get attacked by some of those folks, they don't want to be associated with them. That's similar to people probably even on the Republican side that didn't want anything to do with Trump because of all, the racist people who were endorsing Trump. I'm sure there were some people that looked at that, may have agreed with Trump on policy, but said, I don't want to be associated with that crowd. So they did the same thing there. Unfortunately, I think that's where divisive politics, instead of all of us standing together and trying to lead a revolution, getting behind our candidates and just say, okay, this is my choice, but hey, I like your guy too. May have some differences with them, but you know what? It's best we all stand together and fight against the people who are most certainly the enemy in this election. The corporatist type, the hacks. Instead of all working together and trying to fight back, there's been far too much bickering amongst each other. When at the end of the day, I'm sure that all of us wanted, to get some form of Medicare for all passed through, whether it be Tulsi's plan or Bernie's plan. We didn't want a Buttigieg plan. I think we could agree on that. But instead of finding where we could agree and working together, we've been fighting against each other. And in my opinion, people like the Joe Biden campaign, the Warren campaign, Buttigieg, Steyer, Bloomberg, every one of them are just sitting back and looking at it and say, you know what, I love it when a plan comes together.
Yeah,
and having a big laugh at it.
You know what's funny is at the beginning of this primary, everybody was saying, a lot of the centrist candidates are going to run because they want to flood the market. They want to flood it with as many centrists as possible. That way, if there's 2 or 3 centrists at the end of the day, they can consolidate their delegates and just, wash away any of Bernie's progress or Tulsi or Andrew Yang. But I think it speaks to the larger point of politics is going to be divisive, right? So a lot of people are going to it's also a weird dynamic because you have Biden supporters whose second choice is Bernie, even though policy-wise they're completely radically two different people. Can you kind of speak to the Tulsi and Bernie side? Because I know you said that one seems more plausible. Like you can see that happening despite her saying hey, I'm going to stick this out to the convention, which, we're not here to tell anybody to drop out, unlike others. I welcome both of them to stick around. But I can start seeing this Amy Klobuchar and Joe Biden kind of alliance happening. And it's kind of concerning because, then the Biden would just run away with it, or Pete Buttigieg dropping out and endorsing Biden. So can you kind of talk about that situation and Tulsi's Tulsi supporters and Bernie supporters? I'm gonna go. So I gotta go deal with something real quick, but I'll be right back.
Okay. My stance on that pretty much is basically this. The whole thing with the Joe Biden, like you said, working together with Amy Klobuchar, the centrists are obviously going to be working together. At the end of the day, they're probably going to try and get as many delegates as they can, whoever it looks like could end up being the nominee, they'll all work together, get their delegates together, and try to hand the nomination over, or at least keep it so contested that it's going to go to that second ballot. Let the super delegates get involved, and boom, there you go. Why do I think that? Obviously, especially in Iowa, the Tulsi people would probably end up going for Bernie. It's because, from what I see, they're too similar on the policy. I think that in a lot of cases, the people who were picking Tulsi Gabbard over Bernie Sanders, and again, this doesn't speak for everyone, it speaks for me, and just from my conversations with other people who are pro Tulsi, tweets that I read online, comments I read in my videos, it seems that there's a lot of people who have the same feelings that I do about Bernie versus Tulsi, and that is, while Bernie has most certainly been talking the talk for many, many years, and in a lot of cases he's been walking the walk, what he did in 2016 when he ended up backing Hillary Clinton, who was literally the epitome of so many things he was complaining about when he ran last time around, things that he said were a problem, and then for you to endorse that at the end of the day, and you not even being a member of the Democrat Party, you who has an I after
Sorry about that.
name, that really doesn't exactly help credibility out very much there. And so I think there's a lot of people who just feel like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about Bernie. I don't know that he's real. For lack of a better term, maybe he's the rebel that went soft or something. Maybe he's gotten a little too comfortable with the status quo and thinks that the only way to get anything done is to try and play ball with them to some degree.
Yeah.
And I think further evidence of that is that he said that whomever the nominee is, he said it in the last debate, he said that anyone on that stage, that includes Joe Biden, that includes Mayor Pete, that includes even Amy Klobuchar. He said if any of them were the nominee, he didn't just say he would endorse, he ended up saying he would do everything he could to get them elected. So that means hitting the campaign trail, stumping for votes, just like he did for Hillary in 2016. And with Tulsi, you
Yeah.
get the polar opposite. She endorsed Hillary Clinton, but she didn't go out and hit the campaign trail for her by any means. She's been very vocal in what her problems are with Hillary Clinton. She's suing Hillary Clinton. Matter of fact, hey, Bernie has, in my opinion, right to sue Hillary as well. She's been smearing him. I think
And
he
there's
has a good
evidence
defamation
too.
lawsuit. Right. But he's not doing anything like that. And so unfortunately, I think there's just a lot of people who just, and this is me, I like Tulsi Gabbard's message, but that aside, a big determining factor in why I ended up, really supporting her over Bernie was because I just don't know that, I feel like Bernie's going to push to get his agenda through, but I feel like he's cozying up maybe a little too closely with some of these establishment players, and that just doesn't go over at the end of the day. But if push comes to shove, the reason I say her supporters, if she doesn't make that cut in Iowa, are going to go for Bernie. Their policy is still close, and it's going to come down to this. If you're not going to get Tulsi Gabbard, would you rather have Amy or Joe over Bernie? Because I wouldn't. For all the
Right.
issues that I've raised and some of that, skepticism that I've got about Bernie from what I've seen and heard out of him on certain things, still, I feel like he's at least going to push a more progressive agenda that's actually more helpful to lower middle class folks than you're going to get out of Amy Klobuchar or Joe Biden.
Yeah, and it's funny
But
because
hey, man,
what's funny is that Joe Biden actually came out and said that he doesn't know if he's going to support Bernie Sanders. He has to see how he gets treated in the primary. I don't know if you heard that, but he made that statement. And, it kind of destroys that whole unity thing because they only use that to kind of scare people into, falling in line behind the more establishment favorite candidates.
Exactly.
So we'll have to see, but I think you're right on the
Joe
Tulsi thing.
Joe's a real piece of work. That's all I can say.
Yeah, he's definitely something else. So I wanted to actually talk about this story here. So I don't know if you folks heard about this or not, but Elizabeth Warren came out with this kind of policy of hers that's going to combat misinformation. So she dropped this new policy, and oh my God, people completely kind of freaked out on her because essentially what she's trying to implement is that 1984, what is it called, the Truth Ministry or whatever, Ministry of Truth. That's basically what it is. Is she's trying to get this situation where you can now criminalize misinformation. So if you get, let's say like that Alex Jones situation is kind of a good example, I guess, where, you got people on the internet who are going to say some dumb things, they're going to spread crazy information. But I definitely don't think that it should be criminalized at all, because who's going to be the moral judger of what's true and what's not, and what's misinformation and what's not. It's a slippery slope at best, and at worst it's just outright like censorship of free thinking, and that's the price of freedom. I think is like you're gonna have things that are terrible out there, but the counter to that is putting your message out there and then countering their message, the counter narrative. You know what I mean? And I think
Right.
that's what the internet was always meant to kind of be, is just like you go on here, you're able to put out what you want. And if people don't like it, they can put out what they want, or they can go somewhere else and enjoy whatever content or type of, entertainment or whatever have you that they want. Having the government interfere with this is completely the worst possible solution to the problem. What do you make of her take on this?
I mean, I think Jesse Ventura described this best a long time ago, and I don't even remember which video he said in, but I remember the way he broke it down. The First Amendment is not there to protect popular speech, because popular speech doesn't need protecting. If everybody in the room liked what you were saying, obviously nobody's going to be mad that you said it. It's there to protect unpopular speech. So unfortunately, what people have to learn to accept is that applies to people that may be blowing a whistle, exposing the federal government. And the downside to it is that also means that even, racist pieces of trash out there, like a Ku Klux Klansman, if he wants to go out and say whatever, racist garbage he wants to say, he's protected by the First Amendment to say that. When you start trying to criminalize that, you're really heavily infringing upon the First Amendment big time. And, when we get into this independent media, what I want to know is, if we're going to criminalize this false information, and like you said, who's going to be the one to sit back and say what's false information? Because we already
Exactly.
know that when, people like me or you talk about the military industrial complex, or Jimmy Dore gets out there and talks about the military industrial complex and big pharma and what they're doing in these health insurance companies. And when we start talking about these things, the mainstream media, who social media is already considering the reliable source of information here, they're all saying that we're liars and kooks and nuts and spreading false propaganda and this and that. So, it would stand to reason that since they've enabled these people to do this already, and then social media platforms have already censored us while promoting them, they're obviously going to be the ones who are going to be considered the truth tellers. We're going to be the ones that are considered the liars here in the equation. And in fact, what you're probably going to find is that's the exact opposite in most cases, because CNN, MSNBC, all these mainstream news outlets, Fox, the whole lot of them, okay, they produce propaganda, warp stories, warp facts, just try to manipulate their content
Exactly.
to push an agenda. Whereas people like you, me, and many others are going to come out and call it like we see it. And when we find facts, we're going to expose them. When we come out and, expose that maybe attacking Soleimani was not the best of ideas, you're pushing us closer into war, another war, just trying to keep the gears on the military industrial complex you're turning. People are then going to come out and say, oh, Well, see, you're pushing a false agenda because he was planning an attack on us, and then charge you with a crime, right? While CNN is going to come out and basically say on the flip, hey, this was a well-known terrorist. He's been a terrorist for years. So congratulations to President Trump. He did something great. Well, you know, in his first 4 years of president, he took out a big terrorist.
Right. Yeah, not to mention the fact that it's kind of
it's starting to get to the point where we're almost starting to look more and more like post-World War II East Berlin.
Yeah.
You know, and Radio Free Europe trying to broadcast, you know, the truth over into East Berlin. You know, right. Because they were so censored under the Soviet Union.
Yeah,
and everything.
For all the attacks they make on those kind of countries, they kind of do the same thing here, except through, you know, like this weird like oligarch corporatist like system. What do you make of it though, the constitutional element of this? Because, you know, it kind of to me seems unconstitutional to even try to crack down at the very, you know, minimal level on any kind of speech or anything online. And you were right. I just want to point out the fact that you mentioned how CNN, and they'll get stories wrong all the time. Are we going to criminalize those people? Are we going to see Fredo in handcuffs? Are we going to see, you know, Chris Cuomo walking down the, you know what I mean? It's not going to happen. They give them the benefit of the doubt.
No, it's certainly not going to happen. That I already think I know what the excuse will be when they get something wrong. You know, well, we just had bad information, but that privilege would not be afforded, you know, to others that are not big mainstream news outlets. As far as the constitutionality of it is concerned, it is most certainly, unquestionably, without a doubt, unconstitutional. But is that going to stop them? Absolutely not. Think about it. The Patriot Act, for God's sakes, uses your First Amendment right to violate your Fourth Amendment right. They can literally take some of that unpopular speech we were referencing earlier. You just say anything that, you know, puts a hair up the NSA's ass or the FBI. They don't like one little thing you say. They go, that's a little concerning. You know, this guy said that our military doesn't have the best interests of our country because we didn't kill a terrorist in Soleimani. That Soleimani was actually more of a help. Something like that one thing. We could be saying that right now, and the FBI says, we don't like that. They could then take that before the FISA court that we don't really know much about to get the FISA warrant to then spy on your ass. Right. Okay? So they will violate constitutional rights to no end. They've been setting a precedent for that for so long. The federal government literally doesn't give a flying crap about the Constitution at this point. They disregard it for going to war. They disregard it for your privacy. You know, they disregard it in freedom of speech.
Right. Isn't it funny, too? Isn't it funny that Elizabeth Warren comes out with this thing after she gets completely railroaded on Twitter and everything for backstabbing Bernie? It's kind of a coincidence that...
Gee, I wonder why.
Yeah. After you get attacked on online...
Well, here's what I'm going to say. The fact that she's come out with it, I think we're starting to finally see those true colors from Elizabeth Warren come out even bolder. Okay? Me, you, others had been saying, hey, she's going to stick that knife in Bernie's back, man. Watch out. Lo and behold, there it went. Yeah. Failed miserably on her part, but she did it. She did it as a last-ditch effort. I figured it would come a little later on, but I think she kind of had to because the numbers were tanking. She said, well, you know, I might as well throw that Hail Mary and see if it works.
Right.
I mean, and it did.
Yeah,
but
she was
now,
tanking before
the fact that she's pushed this, I think, shows just how much of a corporate elitist she really is.
I knew it in 2016. She didn't back Bernie in 2016.
But doesn't walk that walk. No, she's a huge elitist. But there's one thing about it. You know, I'm starting to question. I wonder if Kamala Harris might be kind of helping her out behind the scenes a little bit. You know, Kamala was certainly pushing this sort of narrative. She was wanting Elizabeth to jump on board with calling for Trump to be banned from Twitter. if you recall, right?
Yeah, she started the whole
Um, and
situation.
of course, right, and it was Kamala who was pushing the idea of being the prosecutor president, right? So I kind of wonder if she hasn't, jumped over and kind of started trying to help Warren out behind the scenes a little bit. I mean, hey, why not? Kamala Harris has dropped out, so why not get in the race and support another woman of color, a good Native American candidate running for president?
Right, right. uh, you know what's funny too is
I
the
say that
fact that
jokingly about it.
yeah, no, it's funny because Michael Moore even called out Elizabeth Warren in his new podcast, and he went all in, calling her out for, you know, and kind of exposing himself a little bit, saying, "Oh, I just kind of threw this under the rug when she did this," or she called her father a janitor, but before he was like a custodian, or not a custodian, a maintenance man. And the brother of Elizabeth Warren had to come out and say, she's lying. She didn't, our father was never a janitor. Just like little things that are unnecessary for her to even make up, like the Native American thing where she wrote it in back in like the 80s or whatever, the 70s or 90s, I don't know. And she had to like physically write in, "Oh, I'm a Native American," taking away the spot for an actual like Native American to go to these schools. And it's just like, yeah, she's one of those characters where it's like just the lowest of the low. She's willing to do whatever it takes to gain power, to be part of the inner circle. And you saw that with the Hillary Clinton thing in 2016, where she was like sitting on the fence, and then she's like, "Well, I'm not gonna endorse Bernie because I think Hillary's gonna win." And it's like, oh, her political calculation is just all off. It's it's so bad. It's so terrible.
Yeah. I just want to throw a couple things out there on that before we move on there.
Sure.
I think that there's something to most certainly be said when you look in the context. You hear from a lot of people all that about white privilege and all that. I think there's certainly something to be said when literally someone who would most definitely fall off of appearance within the category of the Aryans,
Mm.
blonde hair, blue eyes, and white, has masqueraded as a Native American for
Yeah.
all these years. I think that's just absolutely disrespectful.
Right.
Nonetheless, and I mean, and people try to say it was only the college thing. No, uh,
No, it was other
I,
things.
I brought this up with David last time I had him on my program. Jimmy Dore covered this. She was featured in a Native American cookbook. Literally,
Yeah.
all it was recipes from Native Americans on Native American, dishes. And after each little recipe, it would cite the name of who gave the recipe. And she listed a recipe in that book.
Yeah, it was like
Okay.
the Chow something Chow book.
Yeah, yeah. So she claimed to be Native American there, but even better, you brought up the lie about her father. Now, I'm not that familiar with that one, but it sounds perfectly in line with what I have seen out of Elizabeth Warren. And what I mean by that is she literally, and this is one Jimmy covered on, 2018, she says she was fired from a college, basically sent home because she was pregnant. And back in those days, if you were a woman and you were at a job and you became pregnant, obviously late in the pregnancy, you're going to get a big belly, and not going to be as attractive as a nice figured woman. So they fire you basically and send you home. That's the implication she was giving by that. But what was it, about 10 years before that, she said she was fired from that same teaching job with special needs children. She was fired from the job basically. It really wasn't even a firing. It's what she said 10 years prior. What she said was she was brought in that particular year on an emergency certification. She didn't actually have all of her credentials to actually be a teacher. So they gave her an emergency certification, brought her in, but after that year said, okay, you're going to have to go back and finish getting your credentials. And she went back and then said, I don't know that this is right for me. I don't know that this is what I want to do as a career for the rest of my life. Now,
Right.
that sounds like a more common issue. Okay, it sounds like a
Standard.
normal occurrence. The other pulls that, the women oppression, channels that, feminist
And then
outrage.
she
Oh,
can
how
use
dare
that.
they do that to a pregnant lady? One pulls that emotional heartstring far more than the other one does. And so I don't
Yeah.
know what her father actually was. You may know from what her brother come out and said. What did the brother come out and say your father
He
actually
said
was?
he said that he did maintenance at like apartments and stuff for a while. It wasn't even his career. Like he only did it for a while, kind of like a maintenance man. Like going and fixing things around the complex, I guess. So it wasn't like he was. It's a stretch
Yeah,
to call that a janitor. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um,
a handyman.
yeah, kind of
And
a handyman for
typically
a
they
while.
get paid much better than a janitor too.
Yeah.
Um, I can speak to that because I know people that work in maintenance where I'm at, and I
Hmm.
know the janitors,
Yeah, they get paid well.
and they don't even make remotely close to the same amount of money.
Well,
So
not yeah, not
the
compared to like a repairman, right?
right. I mean, the maintenance folks, even if it's just like regular building maintenance, not even necessarily operating like a boiler room or anything like that. Um, a place I used to work, they had this regular building maintenance that more or less, just turned the fountains on and moved furniture around and things like that. They were making somewheres along the line, and this is in South Carolina now, around I think about 17 an hour starting off.
Yeah.
Janitorial crew that cleaned the bathrooms, vacuumed the floors, dusted, cleaned windows, things like that, barely pushing $8 to $9 an hour. So
Damn.
there's a little bit of a pay difference here. You're almost off by about $10 an hour, literally.
And
One's
it
almost, barely above the minimum wage federally, while the other's, about $10 above minimum wage.
yeah, you know what? What's funny
So
is that it
that, that
speaks.
that's a pretty big difference.
Yeah, it speaks volumes of Elizabeth Warren that she's willing to throw her own father under the bus, all for the sake of identity politics and trying to get those what do you call it, virtue signaling points. You know,
Yeah,
and to me that's even more despicable than an actual like racist person being like I'm racist. Like it's almost more conniving and more like underhanded. You almost it's almost like I don't know. To me, it's more vicious to lie about your father just so you can kind of identify with a working class, so that you can get into power and screw them over. You got to be like
yeah.
a special kind of evil for that.
Well, it's manipulation or an attempt to manipulate people. Just like that pathetic attempt in a video chat she did last year, or might have even been 2018 at this point. I don't remember exactly when it was, but that awkward. Um, I'm gonna go grab a beer. I'll be right
Oh
back.
yeah,
Really? So I mean, she's got all these things she tries to do to play up to working class voters. Now that's because when you can't win them over with policy, because you know what? When people hear Bernie's policy, or even a lot of stuff they heard from Trump that was kind of along the lines of some of Bernie's things, bashing those
yeah.
free trade deals, talking about those jobs. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
When you actually run on good policy, the blue collar people are going to flock to you because of policy. But when you can't argue that policy because you don't want to, because you have no intention of living up to it, and you know that if you talked about it too long, eventually somebody may catch you in a lie on the issue. You can only try to approach it from one way, and that's to pull at the emotions. It's what Hillary Clinton tried to do, the whole woman card. I can't win you over on policy, so I'm going to come out and tell you, hey, vote for me because I'm a woman. Don't you want to see progress? We've, 8 years ago, we finally had the first African American elected president. Now we need the first woman elected president. Why you want to elect an old white man again? That's a step in the wrong direction.
yeah,
Vote for
yeah.
me.
Yeah,
While a
it's
lot of
a
people are going to vote for that, not everyone. The people who actually have lower income and have to worry about putting food on the table, paying rent, making that mortgage payment, getting health insurance.
right.
They're not going to vote for you just because you're supposed to be such and such.
Yeah,
You're a
they
woman.
They don't care
you're of
about that
color,
stuff. They
whatever.
don't care about the virtue signaling. They're worried about, like you said, putting food on the table.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on to this next story. This is actually the the story of the day. This is the one I've been wanting to talk about. So obviously you had brought it up at the beginning of the stream, um, in regards to like this wing of the progressive side of the Democratic Party that keeps talking about candidates in such a way that it's like demonizing them, and it's not. It's like you're punching down at these candidates, and for a strategy of voter outreach, it's kind of the worst thing you can possibly do. Even candidates like Warren and stuff, who I obviously come on my show and talk about in a negative way because they do ridiculous things like that policy we just broke down. I'm not gonna like say, oh, all those voters need to call her to drop out, and like, what is she even doing? Like, I'm gonna
Right.
make the case for Gabbard. I'm gonna make the case for the people who I come out here and I tell you guys this is where I'm coming from. So we have people like, I mean, at this point, who cares? We'll just name drop. I think people like TYT, Sam Cedar, The Majority Report, Michael Brooks, Anna Kasparian, Emma Viglin, and the guy from Progressive Voice. I forget his first name, but Habibi I know is his last name.
Sahil.
Sahil Habibi. Yes. Oh my God. His takes lately have been complete trash. This is the kind of guy that will harp away at Yang supporters and Tulsi supporters and demonize Gabbard and everything like that, and then turn around and voter shame people into Bernie's camp. And it's like, that's not the right way to do it. Can you kind of speak to this? Because I know you've criticized him as well. So let's go ahead and get into this, man. This will be fun.
Honestly, before I really get too deep into it, I'm just going to come out and say this. I'm starting to become more and more and more of the opinion this guy is just a troll. I really am. And I say that because let's just be completely honest in the way he approaches this entire issue. The running down of the Tulsi supporters, the basically you need to be voting for Bernie, but he's dead silent. He's dead silent on the Elizabeth Warren issue, for example, right? He doesn't really say very much at all, at least from what I've heard. I haven't heard him say anything about, being concerned about Elizabeth Warren. I think he's honestly just starting to troll at this point. And the reason why I say that is this guy has got a nickname for his channel. It's called The Progressive Voice, but there's a nickname for it. And I've heard Anna Kasparian reference this when he made an appearance on her show over on TYT one time. It's called Progressive TMZ, I think.
Yeah, kind of
Progressive TMZ.
After the
Now,
original TMZ.
What is TMZ? Yeah, what is TMZs? It is literally nothing but a bunch of people trying to play, gossip girl, basically, about a lot of celebrities and stir that pot, report on the dirt sheets, things like that. But its entire concept is basically to stir the pot and to make people, ooh, okay? So if your nickname is just Progressive TMZ and basically his whole show format is just trying to, stalk through Twitter and read tweets and things like that, and then and I think he's just trying to troll, draw views to himself, and just stir the pot up. And he knows there's obviously a very adamant base behind Tulsi Gabbard. So why not go out there and just poke the bear and rile you up? Because I'm going to get a kick out of it.
Right. Yeah, there's no substance to
I'm
his
really
criticism.
starting to get that opinion. No, there's absolutely nothing to it whatsoever. And what I find ironic was you did some coverage on one of his videos just the other day. And I watched it, and I looked at his graphs. I'm one of those people, I try to look for nice little details. I did my own breakdown covering him. And by the way, I just want to throw out real quick, this is how smart this guy was. I made 2 videos pertaining to it. One where I just pretty much eviscerated, where he started calling Tulsi Gabbard supporters nothing but a cult, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And I broke the whole thing down. And I don't know what made him do this? Because I tweeted a link out to it, right? He retweeted that tweet that had the link to the video where I was just trying to rip him a new one, basically, right? He retweets it. I wake up the next morning and I see these notifications on my Twitter, and I screenshotted it. I made sure I got the proof right there, and I put them in a follow-up video. I had proof in there because when I went to his Twitter after that, gone. I guess at some point he figured out what the video was about, and he said, "Uh-oh," and took it down. Okay, but he literally retweeted the link to that video. Right. And so I was like, oh, man, how thick or do you have to be? Really? And so, but with that being said, though, when he went through the video, he's trying to explain that how Tulsi Gabbard has no chance of getting any delegates because she's not going to get over 15%. Right. But in New Hampshire, he's made this point before. In New Hampshire, he says she's polling at about 5%. I think there's something that come out and said 8% recently, right?
Yeah, there was.
But he said around, right? But he said about 5-6%, and his argument is that she needs to drop out because she is going to be pulling votes away from Bernie Sanders. Okay.
Right.
Okay. And that could end up costing him New Hampshire being an important state. That's where his whole argument lies. Now, what was so ironic, and I commented this in the video, is that Elizabeth Warren, according to that graph he had on the screen showing who was polling where, Elizabeth Warren's numbers have tanked. I think we can all admit that at this point.
Yeah.
She has absolutely put on concrete shoes and jumped into the river here. Okay. She's going down and quickly. All these things she's trying, they're backfiring and they're not working. But it showed she is supposed to be still polling above Tulsi Gabbard in New Hampshire. So that being said, who do you think's pulling potentially more votes based on what you've got on your own screen now? Who's pulling more votes from Bernie, Tulsi or Elizabeth Warren, who, according to that graph, is polling higher than Tulsi? Needless to say, who was defending your candidate recently? Tulsi Gabbard. Who come out when Elizabeth Warren stuck him in the back and said, hey, this is not who Bernie is. Bernie was perfectly fine. He said a woman could be president. He was supportive of me when I said I was running for president. See, Tulsi keeps sticking up for your guy. Elizabeth Warren stuck him in the back.
What's funny is that these people will say,
according to that graph.
Well, I was just going to say that what they'll say about that is, okay, that's great that she did that. Now she should drop out and endorse Bernie. And it's like, really? Like,
right. But
so that's all you want her for.
Why should the snake in the grass drop out?
Right, exactly. The snake in the grass, we're just going to ignore that. And what you were saying is interesting because if you think about it, Bernie has been rising in New Hampshire anyways. He's leading by double digits almost, and it's all correlated to Elizabeth Warren's downfall. So you would almost ask Habibi, hey, don't you think there's more of a correlation between the Warren camp and the Bernie camp as far as the little graph you're showing there? It seems like the more that she declines, the more Bernie's camp increases and his lead increases. And she's the one that has a higher percentage of votes that are being taken from Bernie. Why go after Tulsi Gabbard, who's polling at 8-9%, and her biggest reason for running is anti-war, which nobody's talking about? Why are you belittling the one candidate who's speaking on a progressive platform when it comes to foreign policy when you call yourself the progressive voice? The hypocrisy of this dude is really what drives me nuts. It's just like, like you said, he's just being divisive on purpose. It's a troll mentality, and he contributes nothing to the video.
I think either he's just trying to troll for shits and giggles. Maybe he finds it entertaining. If that's not the case, I think he's angling to become part of TYT. Really,
right.
I do.
Yeah, TYT does the same
Kalinske, thing. And I love Kyle, but he is part of TYT's network. TYT. Brought some YouTubers in to be part of their network, to expand their content and whatnot. I think that's probably what he's angling for. I think he might have, little fanboy crush on Anna. But nonetheless, he obviously clearly has, a lot of support for the TYT's network.
Oh
And so
yeah.
I think he's trying to angle up because they don't like Tulsi Gabbard. Especially Anna and
Well, I feel
Emma.
like he purged.
Jank was a little silent on the issue for a while, but then eventually even he
He jumped in.
had
Yeah.
some choice things to say after the whole impeachment thing went down. But because they've been so critical, and like I said, I think he clearly has a little crush on Anna there. Uh, he most certainly, I think, is angling to get onto that network, and it could be both. It could be both. Like I said, I just don't see any rationale whatsoever
He's a sellout.
in coming out and saying that Tulsi Gabbard should drop out of this race, and you're not saying the same thing about the one who you thought was going to be the next best thing to Bernie, and you said would actually be Bernie's real ally, and that's the one that stuck him in the back.
Right.
I get no sense out of it, and the only thing that I can gather from it is that you're just trying to play up to your friends over at the Young Turks, or that by saying all this, dumb crap, and trying to trash Tulsi again. Tulsi Gabbard's a lot of her supporters are a lot like Tulsi. They stand up and fight. There was actually a shirt. Someone tweeted out a picture of Tulsi holding it. It said something about I forget the exact word. I remember at the end it said "take no shit." But I remember at the beginning it was something along the lines of speak softly or be polite, something like
something
that.
like that, and then take no shit.
But take no shit.
Yeah.
Right. And so basically, I think they all kind of come at that with the same stance. Like, hey, we're here for this, but hey, don't come out and attack Tulsi Gabbard. You get a very visceral response when you start throwing all these BS attacks toward Tulsi. Her fans come out and they get a little hot under the collar.
Yeah, and
a lot of Bernie supporters will do the same thing. But
I was just gonna say that I feel like he's just a sellout. Like you said, he just wants to get on that TYT panel. And TYT, as we know, they've been bought and sold, and they've become they're trying to be the mainstream media for YouTube, like from the progressive side, which is sad and pathetic. But what's funny is that you start seeing this break off from former TYT people. So like you had Jimmy Dore, Kyle Kalinske, like you said, he still kind of associates himself with that, but recently he did a video where he talked about these folks, where it's like this type of voter outreach is toxic. And if you're one of those people, and I feel like he was directing that towards that TYT crew and company, with Habibi being part of that, of saying like, it's what kind of strategy is that? You're just shooting yourself in the damn foot, and you're just handing over the keys to the kingdom to the neo-establishment, neoliberals and the neocons, just to kind of keep this whole show going. All because you want to play, gatekeeper to some, idea that you think is like, oh, the progressives and this is what it means and yada, yada, which they never define it. They'll tell you like they're the progressive champions, but they never define it in their videos. They never say, look, this is what being progressive is all about. This is the history of progressivism. So they just play gatekeepers. And I think it's hilarious that you're starting to see like that Jimmy Dore and Kyle Kalinske folks starting to look at that side of the progressive wing, like the TYT folks in them, and saying, yeah, you guys are toxic and counterproductive. And I think that's really what harms the alliance of Tulsi, Yang, and Bernie, is that the Yang people and the Tulsi people, they get bombarded with those kind of burners, and they're just like, you know what? Why are we even trying to get along? You guys clearly are just bashing and smearing Gabbard or Yang. And it causes them to also attack Bernie people. So you have this vicious like back and forth, which is not productive for anything.
You've literally got a progressive civil war going on between the three camps.
Yeah.
And really it's more of, not so much between the Yang and the Tulsi camps, but it's more or less Yang and Bernie, Tulsi Bernie, and Yang and Tulsi against Bernie.
Yep.
I don't really see too much going back and forth between the Tulsi Yang camps. It's mostly all coming from that Bernie camp. Unfortunately, though, here's what a lot of people need to wake up, get a cup, and accept some cold hard facts here. There are a lot of people who just don't find politics attractive. They find it very, very boring. Believe it or not, my wife is one of them. She knows she knows about this YouTube channel, but she doesn't care. Like if politics starts in a casual conversation, you can immediately tell she just goes, "Oh Lord, here we go." It's just
Right.
not in her personality. I've explained to her why, and I told her, like, look, you should care about it to some degree because this is the future of your country. But she just wasn't raised in an environment where she really cares about politics. She was never raised that it's all that big of a deal. I can tell you right now, my mother-in-law, her mom, she doesn't get all that politically involved. She doesn't study it that much. And when you get people who don't want to sit down and read all these articles, who don't want to watch every single debate, who don't want to watch these town halls, who don't get on all this YouTube and try to look for news stuff, and instead they're looking for, epic fail videos and things like that. These folks only look at, okay, I know you and I know you. That's where you get that. Okay, I'd vote for Biden, but Bernie's my number 2, or Bernie's my number 1, but Biden's my number 2.
Yeah.
Because they know Bernie
It's
from the last time around.
Too,
they know Joe Biden from being. Yeah, I mean, they just don't get that involved into politics. There was some people, Kyle covered it over on his channel, where they literally were like, Bernie's my number 1, but then Biden's my number 2, and Klobuchar is my number 2. Klobuchar. Good Lord, how much of a night and day difference do you have to be from Bernie to Klobuchar?
Right, that's a hell of a stretch.
It's people, they don't get that involved. And so what I believe is that the people who get behind Tulsi Gabbard, who get behind Andrew Yang, you've got to understand something about the people that got into those camps. Not so much for Bernie. I think this does apply a lot to Bernie, but Bernie has become, even though he's attacked, more mainstream because of the last election cycle. But there's still a lot of people who don't really know about Tulsi Gabbard, don't really know about Andrew Yang. I think if they were given much more, exposure this time around, that there'd be people who would actually, and heard their message, that they would have actually gotten a lot more support that we could see than they've gotten. Because again, and I've said this before, it wasn't until a couple of months ago when I mentioned Tulsi Gabbard to my mom, she had no clue. She was sitting there saying, yeah, I want Bernie, I want Bernie, I want Bernie. And then when I said, well, I'm going for Tulsi. Who is that? She had no clue. She didn't know.
Well, a lot of it is the mainstream media too. Is they play a big role.
And that's my point. So that being said, the people who are in their camp are without a doubt people who get involved. They go to these YouTube channels. They watch, whether it be Secular Talk, the Jimmy Dore Show,
right,
my show, your show, Radical Independent, Nico House. They watch these programs, or they do their own homework and they've drawn their own conclusion, and they don't just rely on the mainstream media. And so with that being said, you need to be trying to win those people over. Trying to focus on pulling support from Mayor Pete, trying to focus on pulling support away from Joe Biden. Unfortunately, here's what I believe, and that is the majority of the people in those camps are the sheep following their sheep herder.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, can you touch on that
a lot of
bit?
them don't think for themselves.
Yeah.
They just don't get involved in politics.
Right. No, I what about the Biden situation? Do you think he's crashing his campaign with all these? I guess we can wrap up on that. What do you make of that? That Biden, constantly confronting these voters and feeling entitled to this nomination, where he can just wag his finger and say, "You need to go vote for somebody else. You just need to go away." In a way, that's kind of like you kind of respect that, but then it's like, "My God, Joe, what are you doing?"
There's nothing that would make me want to go out and vote for someone than when I'm trying to, bring up a concern to you, for you to come out and say, no, you know what, you need to go vote for somebody else. I would just want to come out and vote for you so bad.
Right, yeah.
Good Lord.
Waiting in line for that.
This guy, and obviously we've got the most recent example. To be fair, the guy did say he didn't plan to vote for Joe Biden in the primaries.
Right, in the primaries.
But he said I would vote for you in the general election. And Joe Biden got all ticked and offended by that. Well, let's be completely honest. If I had the opportunity to meet Bernie, I've already said, if Tulsi's in the primary when it rolled through South Carolina, hey, she's getting my vote. Period. Pure and simple. Tulsi's getting my vote. Okay.
Right.
But if I had the opportunity to go to a Bernie Sanders rally and I come up and basically said, hey, I'm supporting Tulsi, but if you got the nomination, I would support you.
Yeah.
Here's a concern I want to raise to you. And he basically, you know what? No, you need to go vote for somebody else. So you just need to leave me alone. Go vote for somebody else. No, screw you, dude. Really?
Right.
That's arrogant. That's absolutely arrogant. You need to understand something. You're running for public office.
Exactly.
I'm the voter. You're there to listen to my concerns and tell me what you do about it. Don't tell me to go pound sand. Are you serious? and long before he did it to this guy, okay, I think this one actually was in South Carolina. There was a Hispanic man addressing some issues about immigration. And what was the response? We need to go vote for Donald Trump. Whoa, really?
Yeah.
Not
right
even
off
someone
the cuff.
else in the Democrat primary. Tell him to go vote for Trump.
Right.
I mean, Joe Biden, man, this guy is off the rails. And to be completely honest with you, I'm thinking his mental health is slipping a little bit. Yeah. And honestly, I think this whole impeachment thing is starting to really get underneath his collar. You notice he had that whole finger pointing thing going at a reporter the other day as well.
Yeah, he did. He's done that a couple times.
Brought up some stuff about his son again. Yeah, and when they start touching on that whole Ukraine thing and his son, he doesn't like that at all.
I'm sorry, but if you put your finger on me, you're getting punched. Like don't put your hands on me. Like
don't touch me. That's the kind of guy that I am. I'm gonna respect your space. You need to respect mine. Don't walk up and start putting your hands on.
He gets so close in their space. And like he was adjusting the gentleman's jacket.
The way and that's the thing. Like he didn't just kind of like pat the guy on the chest either. He gave him like a push, and then just started doing this number right here, basically. Like whoa, no, back up a minute, man. But yeah, I think there's definitely that's why Bernie's starting to take off into this.
Yeah.
The DNC. Quite honestly, I've got a feeling that Tom Perez might be wearing a lot of brown pants quite some time. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I think that they're shitting their diaper on a regular basis. If you want to know the truth, they don't want Bernie to get that nomination.
Yeah, they don't want any of those anti-establishment. They've been stacking it up against them.
And the problem is, any other alternative isn't doing anything. Bernie's growing. The attacks aren't working. Biden's slipping. Warren's already slipped. Mayor Pete, hey, he slipped and fell in the wine cave. Klobuchar, Toadette, she's not taking off anywhere. Yeah, but I still don't see her being any sort of threat. I mean, she's rising a little bit, but aside from people like Bill Maher who think that this is the perfect centrist, honestly. I'm more concerned as far as that goes with Tom Steyer and Bloomberg.
Oh yeah,
more than anybody else. To tell you the truth, just because they've got the money to throw at it in the advertisement department.
Yeah, they got billions.
And Bloomberg has already spent way more than anybody else has, and so I think he's just trying to buy his way towards it. And again, polling is showing that. Again, for those folks who don't follow politics, like we were talking about, they're seeing all these Bloomberg ads and like, oh yeah, sounds pretty good. What they don't know is that this is a raise taxes on the middle class guy over here. I'm sure that's not in his ad.
Yeah, stop and frisk and all that.
Exactly. But they're trying to come up with someone that if Joe just doesn't work out, then we've got our plan B in place. And even if that, again, contested convention and flood all the delegates behind Steyer, Bloomberg,
Yep.
or any of these other people that they think they have to if it doesn't look like Joe's going to be able to handle it. But I do think Joe's obviously their main man. But we've seen things change before. I've referenced this election many times in videos. Go back to 2004. Howard Dean was coming on strong, and then all of a sudden, right after when Iowa caucus rolled around, it was downhill from there. He didn't even come close to winning first place in any of the primaries after that. But going into it, he was well, the first place front runner.
Yeah.
And so if that's what even though Bernie's number one now, well, for devil's advocate, say that Joe's the corporate front runner basically here. If it looks like he's failing, we could see a complete swing in the mainstream media. Everyone jump behind that Bloomberg or that
Exactly. Yeah.
that Tom Steyer, whomever they think they have to try and just stop Bernie. They're going to do whatever they have to do. But
Yeah. Well, on that note, man, let's go ahead and wrap it up. What I wanted to do is, if you still got a couple minutes, we can run through a couple comments, and then we'll do a little bit of post chatting. So, all right, let's do our comment section. This is always nice and fun. All right, so I've got Anand, and sorry if I'm mispronouncing these names. He said, "I was so heartened when I saw that many Tulsi caucus guys were saying if Tulsi didn't get her required level, they would leave. That is the only way to get the other candidate to take Tulsi-crats seriously." I really hope that people don't just walk out, but I can't, if people walk out, that's their choice.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, I don't think you should abandon Tulsi Gabbard, but I also wouldn't sit back and let it just be handed over to one of these corporate centrists either.
Yeah.
I mean, it comes down to the issue. It's like I said to David last video, don't vote for the lesser of two evils, just don't vote for evil. And I know there's a lot of people who have referred to Bernie as a snake in the grass. I don't see Bernie that way. I just have disagreements on some of his tactics, man. But I still think he's a far better candidate than Joe Biden. These people are the problem.
I tend to agree with you on that. So Anthony Reyes, shout out Anthony, what's up? He says that the DNC is dropping the individual fundraiser threshold so that as a requirement for these debates, so they can have Bloomberg on there. I've seen a couple people talk about this. So some people say it's good because then Bloomberg can be held to account and not just flood the airways. Other people say it's ridiculous because they've been doing the opposite to Gabbard and Yang and people like that. So for them to open the curtain or whatever, or the velvet rope for Bloomberg, it's kind of like a spit in the face to me. What do you make of that?
Oh, certainly, without a doubt. I mean, I've had a feeling this was coming. Some people were saying basically that that the fact he wasn't on a debate stage actually could have been beneficial to him because no one had the chance to attack him. And now that he's on the debate stage, maybe you can come at him and attack him. But this is more the DNC moving the goalpost. You've got a guy here who's literally buying, his way through these ads to try to win the support. And now you're just going to move the goalpost, say, oh, all you people who we said you had to get so many donations from, well, turns out there's this really wealthy guy who's not taking any money. So, sorry, now it's time we're changing these rules, and now he can be part of the debates too. Wow. Right. I mean, to me, they need to set a rule and says you need to be in the race by this point in time. If you try to declare after that, run third party, you're not getting on this ticket.
Exactly. Good.
All these people jumping in when we're already, on a halftime, it's bullshit.
So Kathy Looney says polls are only Dems, which is not the biggest voting bloc. I was at a Tulsi town hall last week. Only a very small number Democrats, independents, large majority. Even more libertarians than Republicans. And that's the thing, like we were talking about voters coming over to Bernie. It's not guaranteed, man. It's not a monolithic group. It's everybody has their own reasons.
I've got a feeling, though. I still think that the majority of them would go for Bernie, just because a lot of his stuff is more in line with Tulsi, but there's no guarantee. And let's be fair, largest voting group is really the independents. They hold more than Democrats or Republicans. Independents are the ones who've got the plurality out there. Okay,
Isn't that crazy?
but that being said, they've been led to believe so long that no third party candidate has a chance because of the way that it's structured pretty much, and
Yeah.
they rig it up so that they try to eliminate independents. For example, it's not that way in South Carolina, but like I've heard Kyle reference this about New York. If you're not registered Democrat, guess what you're not voting in? The Democrat primary.
That's
Republican
terrible.
can't vote in it. Independent can't vote in it.
So
And so if she's getting all these supports, they're rigging it up so she's not going to get their votes.
and I think that's why she is in New Hampshire, because that's an open primary, so it helps her.
Right.
Which speaks to Habibi's point, because propaganda, shout out propaganda, what's up? They say, what Habibi went on Anna's show. So he's shocked that Habibi went on Anna's show. He went on it twice, didn't he? I think he went on. I know he went on it once for sure.
I know he went on at one time.
Yeah.
To be honest, I need alcohol to watch much of their stuff.
I know it's so
wa-
bad.
Watching it sober, that's whew. But
So, okay.
I watched one video where she
Yeah.
brought him on, kind of picked at him a little bit, and that's where I actually found out what his age was.
Yeah, he's
I
a
didn't
young
realize how
guy.
young he was. I think he's only like 20.
Yeah,
But
he's a
yeah,
young guy.
I know he went on once.
So propaganda follows up, says, I made Anna snap on air on her first live stream. She read my comment calling her a centrist. Hey, good job out there, propaganda.
My man.
Right, yeah,
My man.
exactly. Oh, that must have triggered her so bad. I'll read two or three more, and then
Hey,
we'll wrap up the live stream.
I think we could have heard a little Alex Jones reference from there. Get out of my comment section, you ignorant fuck.
Right. Oh man. Let's see. We got Anand again saying Yang Gang makes politics exciting. Tulsi needs to do it too. Yeah, there is some kind of like entrepreneurial, like, let's do this event. Like it's kind of like a business event where you're hyping everyone up. He has that kind of that feel to it. His campaign, at least.
Yeah, I agree with that definitely. Yang has had a great marketing strategy for his grassroots campaign. I think honestly, in a big way, that's why he's kind of polled above Tulsi in a lot of these polls that he has. I think they're kind of pulling from that same crowd, but his really gets out there and goes at it, trying to fundraise and everything else. He's been very successful in that area. Yeah.
All right, so Cannabis Sativa, shout out, says that I almost lost it. My family members are mainline Dems and don't miss elections. We don't have the privilege of tuning out line some white folks. Sorry. I guess, we don't have, you can't tune anybody out in this election. I think that's the point he was trying to reach. A lot of older voters, they're the ones who make up the majority of the voting bloc, unfortunately, in most elections. So they tend to be the deciders of, who gets in power, man, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think though, and it's been that way for a long time. When you look at the numbers, it's only like a third of the country comes out to vote. I think that might start changing. I think there's a lot of young people who have started taking slightly more interest into politics again. How interested are they? What I have started to see, and this is not necessarily a good thing, is that a lot of them want to go out to vote, but they still don't do enough homework.
True.
They still think that Joe Biden is this great candidate, for example. I've seen it a lot on my Facebook feed. I think they're going to start getting more active, but they need to start realizing where they need to gather information from isn't CNN.
Yeah, he follows up. He says, if Tulsi can sheepdog libertarians and conservatives into progressive policies, that is good. So kind of his take on that. Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with that. It's like the Joe Rogan situation, you know? Joe Rogan
Yeah.
came over to Bernie, and I think that was a good thing. So, okay, one more here. Uh, Andrew Yang is only running on charisma and personality. His policies line up with Democrats for little change. That's from Proper. Is that from propaganda? No, that's from Keen James. Shout out Keen. Keen, I tend to kind of disagree with Yang on some things. I will give you that. But for the most part, I think that he would at least implement his UBI for sure. Like I think that's something he is
Yeah. Yeah.
radically for. You know, he really wants to get that through. And his foreign policy does kind of worry me a little bit coming from the Tulsi camp. But
Yeah. Um,
politicians aren't perfect, I guess.
no. What I would say to that is foreign policy to me, as you know, hear people say now, I think his foreign policy is a little pretty weak sauce.
Yeah.
But on the little change, no, I like the universal basic income. I think that's a good idea. I think he was, kind of ahead of the field on really pushing that sort of issue. He hasn't
Exactly.
released a plan, but he has said he would also support Medicare for all.
Yeah.
And last but not least, I think he stood out from the pack in the sense that he jobs again, bread and butter issues for working class. He's talked about the jobs, truck driving being one of his main focal points.
Yeah, that's
Employs
a
a
big one.
lot of people across the country. And what is he pointing out? Hey, don't worry about illegal immigration. Don't listen to Donald Trump's fear. Okay.
Right.
Don't listen about wage and this and that. What's coming after your jobs? Computers, automation. I can
Yeah.
speak to that entirely because I can't say obviously I'm not going to risk losing my job, but where I work at, inside the plant, they are intending to increase more automation to load these 18 wheelers up. And when they get there, all those workers, they're trying to get it to where there won't be workers handling the product to load the truck. It's going to be all done through automation. When that happens,
Well,
layoff,
let's hope
big
let's hope that
layoff.
Bernie, kind of embraces some of that stuff too, because I think that that's
Yeah,
an important part
definitely.
of it. But hey, folks, thank you very much, Charles. Why don't you guys give your pitch here to the folks in the chat? We got about 28 of you watching now, so go and check out the Independent Report. Where else can they find you?
Yeah, over on Twitter, Twitter handle is at Vigilant Indep. That's INDEPE1. That's the Twitter handle.
Yeah.
When I upload videos, I'll be tweeting out links to them over on Twitter. Again, YouTube channel, The Independent Report. Right now, with my first shift hours, I'm going to start trying to get back to uploading at least about 3 to 4 videos a week in the evening and everything. Definitely going to start trying to pick it up. We're going into the Iowa caucus, so I hope you'll come over and check out the videos.
All right. Yeah, and his YouTube channel link is in the description below. So definitely go and check it out. Smash the subscribe button. All the support helps. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you follow news and politics. I'll be having another guest on later tonight. So everybody who's watching, go ahead and check that out. All right, man. Thanks. And stick around for a little bit and we'll have a little chat. Everybody else, see you later.
All right.